Hi, I'm Ben Ferguson, and welcome to your AMAC Weekly News. First up, it's the biggest story of the week, and it deals with the Capitol being attacked. The question now is, why did this happen, and how did so many people act shocked when there was violence that broke out? The media has been conditioning Americans to do political violence now for the last year. If you don't believe me, just look at the Black Lives Matter protests, riots, and looting that happened all over the country that the media described as, quote, mostly peaceful protests. More on that in just a second. And with Democrats claiming total victory in the Georgia Senate runoff races, the left is moving forward with an extreme agenda. We have the details of all of what they're planning to do in just a moment. And finally, what do we do now with Democrats in total control of Washington, D.C.? Our own AMAC national spokesperson, Bobby Charles, joins us to talk about the fight ahead. Your AMAC Weekly News starts right now. What Americans witnessed this week was unacceptable. It was disgusting, and it was horrific, the attack on the United States Capitol. But you also have to look at cause and effect. Why did this happen? How did it happen? And why did Americans feel like they had the right to do this? Well, if you want to start pointing the finger at people, let's start at number one with the liberal media that has normalized political violence in this country over the last year, nationwide. When you had groups of people that were destroying businesses, large and small, were attacking business owners, trying to protect their businesses from the riots of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, the media continued to call it mostly peaceful, even justifying the actions and the anger. When police officers were being shot and killed and assaulted, police cars being flipped and torched, police stations being set on fire, city halls being attacked, and government officials being assaulted, they continued to normalize it and act like this was okay because they supported the causes of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And even when the buildings were on fire and people were destroying property on live TV, they would stand there and tell you, the American people, that it was mostly peaceful, so it's all okay. So when people decided to storm the Capitol, you have to ask the question, what moved them to this point? Let's be clear about where we are in this country. You have a government that is not listening to the people. You have Americans that are desperate to be heard. And on Election Day, when they were supposed to be heard, they felt like they were not listened to. The rules had changed at the last minute, all in the name of COVID-19. It doesn't justify the actions of the people at the Capitol, but we do need to understand why this is happening. And one of the things that is very clear is the American people feel like their government at all levels is not listening to them. You have a government that has told Americans that they can go to a casino, but they cannot go to church. You have elected officials that have told you you can't see your family or have a funeral or even do Christmas or Thanksgiving, while they do exactly what they told you couldn't, while they travel out of state, while they gather with their families. You have elected officials that don't realize that Americans are hurting right now and their businesses are being destroyed because of their rules, yet they have not missed a single paycheck in government. If you want to know why yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before people became angry, it's because the government is not listening to the people. You want to blame somebody for normalizing political violence, you need to look at the media. They spent an entire year normalizing it. And lastly, if you want to know why I rolled my eyes when Joe Biden came out saying enough of this already, go back and look at history. Name one time that Joe Biden ever came out as American cities were on fire. Did he ever condemn the violence? Did he ever defend the police? Did he ever protect the police? Did he ever tell people to respect other people's opinion, not torch businesses and small businesses? No. You want to know why? Because the people that were doing it were on his team. Kamala Harris actually encouraged just months ago for the protesters to not stop while cities were actually burning. And when the media was shocked that the Capitol was stormed, it's the same media that earlier this year that acted like the Black Lives Matter protests, which set fires all over Washington, D.C. And while people were attacking the White House and assaulting the Secret Service, They continued to tell the American people that what was being seen on TV was somehow politically justifiable, that this was okay. In fact, virtually the entire Democratic Party never condemned the violence that we saw, whether it was in the nation's capital, whether it was against police, whether it was against store owners, because they knew it was an opportunity to use something to incite people, to make them angry, to make them frustrated, to then go out and vote for them. Yes, what we saw at the Capitol on Wednesday was disgusting, but you have to understand why it happened. And let's finally look at social media for a second. Social media, after the president said for people to go home, suspended his account because they didn't like the way that he said it, locking him out of Twitter and indefinitely locking him out of his account on Facebook until after Joe Biden becomes the president. So if you want to know why people are angry, when you can literally on social media, the biggest news sites in America, take the President of the United States of America and shut down his account while he's the president, don't be surprised when normal Americans get angry when they feel like they're not being heard or they're being silenced by social media. The left got a huge gift because of what happened. They can now stain this into the memory of Americans saying, look how bad Donald Trump and every one of his supporters is, even though the majority of Trump supporters like myself condemn the violence that happened in Washington, D.C. this past week. It was wrong. But we'd also be fools not to understand why people are at their wits' end. It's the same government that advocated for political violence for the last year. It's the same Democratic Party that advocated for political violence and the burning of cities for the last year. It's the same social media that did not take down posts of political violence and people organizing that political violence for the last year. In fact, the Vice President of the United States of America, come January the 20th, Kamala Harris, was actually raising money for the people breaking the laws in these Antifa and Black Lives Matter rallies. The people that were torching buildings, she was raising money to bail them out of jail. So if you want to know how we got here, this is exactly how we got here. You can blame the media for normalizing it. You can blame the Democratic Party for never condemning political violence. And you can blame social media for silencing the voice of conservatives. And when you add all that together, on top of the fact that we had an election and the way the election was done was changed in the name of COVID-19 by a bunch of people that have never missed a paycheck while Americans are suffering. And then they throw you a measly $600, $50 a month for the next year to tell you to shut up and go home. You might understand more why we are so divided in this country right now. We saw something very shocking this week. After there was the special election in Georgia, Democrats and leftists immediately called for radical legislative action to be taken to ram through the entire agenda of President-elect Joe Biden. Last week, the Wall Street Journal editorial board came out with a significant warning that if Republicans lost control of the Senate, it would effectively end the prospect of any meaningful oversight over the Biden administration, including the scandal involving his son, who is currently under federal criminal investigation over his taxes and foreign business dealings. Having lost control of the Senate committees, Republicans would also lose the ability to stop any of Biden's nominees. The Journal added, quote, some of our friends think Democrats couldn't blow up the 60-vote legislative filibuster rule with a mere 50 votes. Their confidence hangs on West Virginia's Joe Manchin, who says he supports the filibuster. But imagine the political and media pressure on Mr. Manchin if Republicans use the filibuster to block Joe Biden's agenda. He's always been a loyal party man when it really matters. If the filibuster stays, Mr. Biden will need to compromise to get GOP votes for an infrastructure bill, new Obamacare subsidies, or repealing Section 230 on tax liability. A public option on health care is probably out of reach, as would be much of his climate agenda. But if the filibuster goes, so do bipartisan restraints. Statehood for the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico become possible, with 4 new Senate seats to cement a Democrat majority. Mr. Biden's aggressive union agenda has a chance, including overtime pay mandates and easier organizing of franchise chains. So do nationwide mandates for ballot harvesting and mail-in voting, a ban on arbitration and business contracts, price controls on drugs, huge subsidies for green energy, and perhaps a carbon tax. We could go on. Well, apparently the Democrats were reading the Wall Street Journal. Democrats and left-wing activists immediately called for, you guessed it, eliminating the filibuster. They also called for packing the courts and adding new states and areas that will all but assure the Democrats end up with a total of anywhere from 2 to 4 new U.S. senators. Brian Fallon, a former top aide to Hillary Clinton, tweeted this: "Make D.C. a state, restore the Voting Rights Act, eliminate the filibuster, reform the courts, and somehow," he says, "that will revive democracy." Left-wing activist Paige Wolf wrote on Twitter, quote, "Well, I'm calling it. We got the blanking trifecta. Take no prisoners. Burn them to the ground," referring to conservatives. "Kick the turtle shell straight to hell. Pack the courts. End the filibuster. Make D.C. and Puerto Rico and Guam all mother you-know-what states." Yes, this is the left. Adam Jentelson, former aide to Senator Harry Reid, wrote on Twitter, "If Democrats win both Senate seats in Georgia, it's going to be hard to explain why they should promptly re-empower Mitch McConnell by seeking small ball deals with him instead of getting rid of the filibuster and passing Biden's big, bold agenda. Biden has a mandate. It's time to use it." Left-wing activist Walker Bragman wrote on Twitter, "Democrats will have complete control of the federal government for 2 full years. They can pack the court. They can end the wars. They can cut the monthly checks. They can guarantee health care. They can forgive student and medical debt. If they don't, you know who to blame. They will have to employ the nuclear option and eliminate the filibuster," he also added. But they can do it. And given the GOP's willingness to throw traditions out the window for power, he says they should eliminate the filibuster, ram through the huge relief for everyday people, and ride it to 2022. Oh, the Democrats weren't done. Radical Representative Jay Appel wrote, quote, "Victory in Georgia must lead to transformative change across America. Reoccurring survival checks, union jobs that pay a living wage, guarantee health care, racial justice, voting rights, immigration reform, climate action, repro justice, education, and much more. I can't wait." Even leftist activist Julie Rosinski wrote, quote, "Trump has led his party over the precipice. First thing Democrats should do is eliminate the filibuster and get some real work done. Second thing they should do is grant statehood to Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia." Now, look, the point is we must make sure that we don't allow any of this to happen without a significant fight. What Democrats are trying to do right now is overthrow the Constitution and the will of the people and democracy. And that is exactly why we must organize and fight back now. Let me be clear. There is no vacation being taken by the Biden team or the leftists. And we here at AMAC, well, we're not taking a vacation either. We are in this fight to protect our freedoms, and we're going to need your help, especially for the next 2 years, to get it done. So there's a big question that many conservatives are asking themselves right now in this country. What do we do moving forward, especially after what has happened in Georgia? And do I disengage in politics because I just don't trust the integrity of the system? Or is it time for us to organize like never before and fight back? Joining me now to talk about the next 2 years is Bobby Charles, the AMAC spokesman. Bobby, I know that many Americans, many that are going to watch this, many AMAC members are furious because they do feel like the system is not authentic. It is not accurate. It is not truthful. It's not honest. And the way this election just took place, you then see what's happening now in Georgia and the reality that Democrats are overwhelmingly now going to be in charge for at least the next 2 years. I've heard a lot of people be angry, but a lot of people said, I'm done with this. I'm done with politics. It's all rigged. It's all fixed. I'm just one person. Or there's the other idea, which is where I go with this, Bobby, and that is it's time for us to now organize like never before because you also have the swamp, the Republican swamp, the GOP swamp that is back in business in Washington, and we got to watch them as well as the Democrats. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, Ben, you've very well encapsulated the views of most AMAC members and certainly of myself. This is a very serious moment in the history of our republic. It's hard to move and it's hard to live through serious moments when democracy and in particular freedom is on the run from influences that we've broadly described as socialist and lacking integrity, but really they're forces that are largely anti-American. What we've seen is both international foreign parties and also those in this country seeking to undermine faith in the system, trying to undermine the outcomes of the system. And I would argue, and I think the majority of Americans, at least a majority of Republicans, believe that the irregularities were profound. And why were they profound? Let's get on the election, on the national election scale, before we talk about what we're next going to do about it. Let's look at this objectively. A lot of people say, well, what's different about this year from any other year? And the answer is, well, there has always been, and predominantly on the Democrat side, shenanigans in certain states in terms of ballot counting and processes. We had this time, for the first time in the history of the Republic of the United States, we had tens of millions of mail-in ballots, which incidentally are illegal in most European states, right? Why are they illegal? Because they are the open door to fraud. We also had constitutional time limits for getting evidence in front of the Supreme Court. We're not quite at the end of that time period, but it sure looks like the hourglass is running. So in the big picture, objective fact number one, mail-in ballots are an open door to fraud, and we had more of them this year than ever before. Number two, I have talked with affiants. I have read affidavits. We have them from Detroit. We have them from Philadelphia. We have them all over the country. A lot of this has been shown to the American people. Some of it, I have no doubt, will be shown later to the American people. But we're up against constitutional time limits again, and you don't typically make a mega case in 30 or 60 days. It takes years. I mean, I was a litigator. I clerked for a Reagan appointee on the U.S. Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit, worked in the Reagan and Bush 41 White Houses, and as you know, was an assistant secretary of state under George W. Bush. I've seen public corruption all over the world. And what bothers me, the reason this is such a serious moment for America, is that we are looking at indicia of public corruption, certainly in 5 or 6 states, that if we don't correct it, begins to taint and infect and undermine the entire process.
And Bobby,
yeah,
it's not just states. What the Democrats did so well in this election, and I give credit to the enemy when they beat you, and what they figured out was, we don't have to do this statewide. We just have to do this in major cities. Look at what has happened in Fulton County, where in this runoff election there in Georgia, almost 8 votes for Democrats for every 2 for Republicans in Fulton County. You look at Detroit, that was able to basically swing the state. They were very smart at taking cities within states that they needed to win to get the White House, and just doing this in places like Philadelphia, because then it was harder to, again, A, see it happening, B, have as many eyes on it, and it was easier to pull it off because the elected people around you are Democrats.
Right. So very good point. The cities were the centerpiece. I won't list them, but you're absolutely right. Look, a democracy, and this is, or a republic, and this is a republic, we have representative democracy, depends at the end of the day, not just on integrity of the vote counting process, but on honor in the abiding of rule of law. When we lose honor, okay, and I'm talking about just basically understanding that a democracy requires honesty at the polling place, at the counting place, at the ultimate, in all decision making. If we lose respect for each other, we lose respect for the process, we lose respect for honor, we're up a creek without a paddle. So what's the argument? I'm going to go back to the beginning of our conversation. You can either get disengaged. It's like a giant A-frame roof. Okay, you can either get disengaged, fall away, and say, I'm never going to be involved in politics again because I feel betrayed, which many of us do, or I am going to fix this process and I'm going to get highly engaged. I'm going to work with AMAC. We are, honest to God, we have pushed not only the petition out with 150,000 signatures on it. We have more than 2 million members who are out there vocally talking to state legislatures, but we have actually moved the wheel. I mean, I have been reading now that the Senate in Pennsylvania, other locations, took very seriously the tens of thousands of AMAC emails that came to them and said, hey, you are state legislators. You have a constitutional opportunity. You have a constitutional prerogative here. You need to act act on that. Part of what we're doing here, Ben, is we're walking through between now and January 20th, unless the Supreme Court intercedes, and even if they do, we're walking through a wing of a giant constitutional mansion that is filled with cobwebs. We have not been down this wing corridor for 100 years, since 1876 and beyond. And so I think what we have to do is take heart. We have to say, look, we either believe in this country or we don't. And if we don't, you might as well just pack it up. If we do, and I think a majority of those that didn't vote, as well as all those who did vote for Trump and we're looking for integrity in the system, I think we do believe in this country. And I think what we have to do is stand up, work together. I've just written 2 or 3 pieces out on amac.us that show there are ways to go with this. So, I'm going to go back to a combat analogy. I was Navy.
Well, let me jump in and say something that I think is so important for people that are watching. And that is Democrats have always, in my opinion, done a better job of organizing. When they lost to Donald Trump, they didn't waste a single moment going on the offensive, going on the attack, going after Donald Trump, going after the legitimacy of his presidency, going after Russia, going after collusion, saying he's not a legitimate president because he didn't win the popular vote. My point is, they, at least when they lose, they immediately start fighting back. And they did it to the point of impeachment. Now, as conservatives, my argument is this. We don't have time to take a breath. Learn from them and what they did over the last 4 years. They didn't take a moment. They didn't take a vacation. They didn't go to town for a weekend. They immediately got in the fight to go after Donald Trump and anyone that supported him and to attack him through the midterms and then to this election. And what we need to learn from them, especially in Georgia, is they didn't take a breath in Georgia between Election Day, November, Presidential Election Day, and this runoff. And it clearly paid off for them. And it's frustrating because I think, yes, we don't seem to organize as well as they do, but we better do it this time because if we don't, we're going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. I really do. And I'll just say this. Look, what does AMAC stand for? What do we believe in? Obviously, we believe in electoral integrity. That is part and parcel of the Republic. We also believe in the Constitution. And more importantly, even perhaps than that, we believe in the Bill of Rights. Those 10 amendments in the next 2 years are going to be under tremendous pressure, particularly the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth, the Sixth, the 10th. They're going to be under tremendous pressure. We need, as Americans, to be educated. We need to step up and we need to defend these rights. And I'll just give you 2 very short analogies. One is combat, right? How many times do you read Ernie Pyle or Rick Atkinson's trilogy about World War II and realize that guys are outnumbered, they're looking up at a hill and they're saying, crap, there's people on the other side of that hill. It's a hill. How are we going to take this? Do they get discouraged? Do they walk away? Do they say, forget it? Look, no. They say time and again, optimism about what we can do, pulling off the possible, turning things around, taking that hill is essential. And so as a republic, we need to understand that you don't give up in the face of stiff wind. You turn into the wind and you make stuff happen. And the other analogy, which is sort of trite, but comes to my mind, I mean, I've spent years in courtrooms. I've spent years working as a lawyer and also as an advocate and as a policymaker and in the private sector running national security related operations. And I'm just going to say this, I'll never forget the line that from one of the Rocky movies where he's talking to his son and is one of the later ones. And he says to his son something like, it isn't how hard you throw a punch. It's how many punches you can take and keep going. And we are taking a punch right now. We need to get up off the ground, get up off the mat, get back into the ball game and say, look, we do defend America. We did love that Rushmore demonstration of patriotism. We do believe in the Bill of Rights. And as a result, count us in. Okay, we're part of the solution, not the problem. And I think, Ben, that is the biggest we're up against right now.
Look, I say this to every AMAC member and everybody watching this today. It is time to get engaged like never before. And you better hurry up and do it. And AMAC has got 2 battles right now. And I'll end with this with you. One is against the Democrats and Bidens and the Pelosi's and the Schumers and the Reids. That's going to be a huge battle. The other war that we're going to make sure that we don't lose is with these Republican establishment swamp rhinos who are going to go back to the old way of doing business, the pre-Trump administration way of doing business in Washington. And that's the other thing. We have 2 battles now that AMAC's AMAC's going to be fighting, and we're going to be holding them accountable. We're going to be giving you the resources you need to have your voice heard, and it's going to be a tough, hard-fought couple of years now, but AMAC, we're ready for it, and we're going to make sure you have the tools you need to fight back. Bobby, I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to having you back again real soon, and like you said, it's going to be an uphill battle, but it's time to get off the mat and time to get back in the fight.
And as Ronald Reagan said, just to close out with this, as Ronald Reagan said, concentration of power is always the enemy of freedom. We need to stand for freedom.
Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate it. Lastly, if you haven't joined AMAC or renewed your AMAC membership, you just heard Bobby and I talk about how important it is that you get in the fight right now. So make sure you renew your membership or join AMAC. Tell your family and friends about AMAC. Share these videos on social media so that others will see the hard work we're doing. But right now is the time to get in the fight, not walk away from this. And we are here to help you do that. I'll see you back next week for AMAC Weekly News. Have a fabulous week.